It's possible I did a little light food poisoning this weekend.
Did a little, like, to yourself?
Sometimes wounds are self-inflicted. We hurt the ones we love the most.
Yes, I get it.
Maybe it was Monday and I was like, I could go for a snack, and the Thanksgiving leftovers were still in the fridge.
Oh no.
And I thought it was Sunday, or maybe, the time's a little fungible over the long weekend when you don't go back to work until Tuesday usually.
Now, hang on. Thanksgiving was only Thursday.
Yeah.
We're talking leftovers of maybe 72 hours in age, right?
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Oh, Monday. Okay. Yeah. 96 hours.
Yeah. And look, I made a big old plate of sides and put some gravy on it and gobbled it all up. And then, strangely enough, at like 1 o'clock in the morning on Monday night, I didn't feel bad, but I definitely didn't feel good.
Did you eat it cold?
No, I warmed it up, but food poisoning doesn't work that way. The reason
depends on what kind, right?
So I didn't realize this until fairly recently, but there's a food safety podcast that I listen to occasionally that they talk about this. Food poisoning is when things are growing in your food that excrete things that are toxic for you most of the time.
I've heard this.
And so thus, when you heat up food that has things growing in it, you kill the things that are producing the toxin, but the toxins remain.
But not their poop.
The poop is still there.
The poison poop.
Yeah, all the excreted cytoblasts are still there, blasting your guts.
So is that universal? Because I have definitely heard that before, but I assumed that some food poisoning was caused by the actual microbes and others was based on the excretions. But is it all the latter?
So I don't think it's food poisoning. I think you just get an infection if you eat something that's infectious. So, like, for example, if you drink raw milk, then in California you can get H5N1, which is the bird flu virus, and is really like, you don't want that. Avoid that.
Yeah, the gift that keeps giving.
Yeah, but you can get that by ingesting contaminated food, like unpasteurized milk. So this is one of the reasons that 150 years ago, we were like, you know what's good? Pasteurization. It kills all of the things that kill a lot of people from foodborne illnesses. So food poisoning is eating food that poisons you. Mm-hmm. Foodborne illnesses are eating foods that make you sick.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. Hello.
The podcast is called Food Safety Talk. It has Don and Ben. They talk about food safety and micro. It's like the kind of stuff you get in microbiology if you take that in college. Like you get a little taste of that there. They're very good.
Sure. Food safety is a good thing to talk about on a show called Food Safety Talk.
I mean, it is exactly what you have there. Their logo is a thermometer with a line, and the temperature is above the top line of the thermometer. Because like they talk about like food safety, like safety ranges for pasteurizing food and stuff like that.
Of course. Have they done an episode about room temperature rice?
They've done 317 episodes. I'm assuming they have done an episode about anything. Like they do question and answer episodes. I'd sent questions in a few times.
Shit, they're ahead of us by like 50 episodes. But
yeah, I know. They started this around the same time we did, I think. Maybe a little before.
But I assume you have seen, not to just derail the podcast right from the top, I assume you've seen the controversy about leftover rice.
Oh, look, people are crazy about rice, man. Like, what is it? Is it you leave it out at room temperature, it grows something that will instantly murder your entire family?
Yeah, basically, was my understanding.
Is this a real thing, or is this like the fans?
I don't know. I really don't know. I can tell you, though, that we have eaten a tremendous amount of leftover rice around here.
But I always take it right out of the rice cooker and then put it directly in the fridge.
I think that's the recommendation.
Yeah. I don't know if look, we're not food safety people. If you want to know the answer to this, go to Food Safety Talk, the podcast for food safety people.
Exactly.
If you want to talk about Pat Gelsinger retiring from Intel, in a surprise announcement, and also what the hell's up with WordPad, this is the podcast for you.
That's right. We may not be food safety experts. We're definitely technology experts.
Yeah, we've got a twofer today for you. Today, well, we had two things, and I think initially, like, this always happens when we do a twofer, is we say, oh, these aren't big enough for an episode on their own, and then we go and write like 15 pages of notes, and here we are. So, do you want to do Intel first? Do you want to do?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is the big news, I think, this week.
I started to say that's the big story of the week. let's say within a narrow sphere of technology news, it's the big story, and I would say there's other stuff going on out there.
Yeah. So Pat Gelsinger came back to Intel in 2021, I think. 2022 as kind of the savior of Intel. Like they've had woes. They've had some problems. They had, the Raptor Lakes refresh and having to release the same processor twice with clocked up cores, 3 times really with clocked up cores was a real kind of black eye. And they've been getting their asses kicked by NVIDIA in like the AI stuff. The AMD is rising in consumer. It's not been a good time for AMD. And they brought Pat in on this let's see, where I wrote it down here somewhere, but they brought Pat in with the idea that he had a core strategy, and the core strategy was they were going to do 5 nodes, meaning 5 new processes in 4 years, and regain technological expertise in manufacturing, as well manufacturing Intel chips, as well as becoming, as their foundry business, their chip manufacturing business, becoming a US based leader in contract chip manufacturing that can compete with TSMC. People don't know TSMC is Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, I think.
Yes, I believe that's right.
And they make literally 60% of all chips and 90% of advanced process chips. So advanced process chips are things like CPUs, GPUs, anything that uses like a novel, new, really high density process, manufacturing process for chips. So
right. Anything that needs to be very efficient, like what's in your phone or on data center blades.
Yeah, it's small AI, and fast.
Yes,
is the thing that they do. And so Intel led process technology for 40 years. TSMC kind of came up and scooped up all the ARM business and all the GPU business over the years. And Gelsinger came in as a person who joined Intel when they were 18 years old with an associate's degree, and wrote books about programming the 386 and was the lead architect of the 486.
Wow, was he really? So yeah. I've known about his book. In fact, I've got it. You can still order it from Amazon. Well, they don't have new copies anymore, but programming the 8386.
Yeah, they still put the 80 in front of the processor names back then.
Like my understanding is that's like kind of the book about x86 assembly of that era.
Well, yeah, and if you think about it, the 386 was the beginning of Intel had dominance in the early PC era, the 8-bit and 16-bit eras with the 8088 and the 286. But the 386 is the beginning of modern Windows. 386 was what ran Windows 95.
Yeah, first 32-bit CPU from them, right?
First 32-bit CPU was the first time. I guess they had a math coprocessor to do floating point math for the with the 286 that was the 287, but the 386 had a math coprocessor as well. And it was the beginning of Intel, like the Wintel hegemony, right?
Yes.
So Pat left in 2009. He joined a different company, ended up being the CEO of VMware.
Yeah, wow, shit. I didn't realize he ran VMware for like a decade.
Yeah, and then they brought him back in 2021 to, for a second go round. Like when he pitched his case for being the CEO of Intel, his strategy was, we have to be good at making stuff, and we have to be able to make stuff for everybody in the world. So if Samsung, like, we need to build a competitive infrastructure so that if Samsung or NVIDIA or Apple want to buy an advanced process node chip, we want them to be able to consider building it on Intel processes, not just TSMC processes. So anyway, on the 2nd, which was I think Sunday, is that right? No, Monday.
Yes.
Pat, as I was eating 6-day-old stuffing and food poisoning myself.
Oh no.
Pat announced he was retiring, and in the time since 2021. Now, there's a couple of things. We'll talk about some of this later, but it takes a long time to build new fabs, and it takes a long time to design new processes. And there's 2 different reasons that those things are hard. And we'll talk about them a little bit.
Yeah. Can I jump in? When you say process,
yeah,
we're talking about a process node in the sense of fabricating a chip, not the generic term of process, which just means a way of doing things, correct?
Yeah. So process in the chip design state means building a node with components of a specific size, and that indicates the density that you can have, chips on the die. So in the last 30 years, we've gone from like micrometer sized circuits to angstrom sized circuits, orders of magnitude smaller.
Been in the nanometer era for quite a while now, but I guess Intel is the one who would say we're moving into the angstrom era, right?
I mean, I think that's their intent, but whether they actually are or not, it's Intel built their entire business on being better at shrinking processes, getting smaller and smaller circuits faster than anybody else. And that stopped mattering as much in the last few years. And that's why we're seeing things like disaggregated chip designs where the compute stuff is on the really, really super advanced process, and the kind of housekeeping stuff that does memory control and all that stuff is on less expensive process nodes, so that they're not spending as much money building those chips. So anyway,
my understanding, real quick, I'll just say, I mean, obviously we are not fabrication specialists here, but the process isn't just transistor size. It also includes like specific techniques. EUV lithography is a term I have seen many times about some of the smaller processes lately. Like they're different kinds of like a material science techniques to help them continue to shrink things smaller and smaller, right?
Yeah, it's everything from how you make the silicon discs that start out. Sometimes we're not even using silicon as the substrate anymore. Sometimes we're just using glass now, right? To how the circuits are etched onto the semiconductor, how the semiconductor chips are attached to other chips inside the package, and it is a phenomenally complicated topic. That there's a reason there's 2 or 3 companies in the world that do this. Samsung and TSMC and Intel and Global Foundries are pretty much it.
Right. Because I mean, like when you get down to it, the process of shrinking processes is kind of a process of defying physics, right? Like you're constantly fighting with electricity at tiny, tiny scales and trying to prevent like signal drift or electrical drift across very, very tiny bits of metal, right?
So it encompasses material science, because like how you build those boules that you then slice the discs off of, and how you then treat the discs, and how you like the machines, the manufacturing that has to happen to build the machines that can build the machines is incredibly complicated. And then of course there's like inside a fab, you have to have you have to have humans able to walk around without spreading lint and detritus and dead skin flakes and all the things that humans are just constantly sloughing off. So it is, we talk about the space program and stuff like that as being miracles of modern science and going to the moon. But in reality, building a processor that holds 6 billion circuits, 6 billion transistors on it is an incredible achievement on the same scale. And we do that every 18 months.
Size of like your thumbnail now.
Yeah.
Or something.
They're tiny.
Yeah. I feel like it's worth talking about kind of what state Intel was in prior to his return, or at least from our perspective. I mean, it's a huge company with, revenue streams coming every which way. We mostly care about like desktop and laptop processors and stuff, but
those are a tiny part of the market. Well, desktop is a tiny part of the market. Yeah. Laptops are big.
Yeah. Although you can look at their processor lineup in that time as sort of being emblematic of where their process technology was, right?
Yeah, so there's multiple product lines. It's really complicated. It's kind of beyond the scope of what we're talking about here today. But they had ridden, like I said, for 40 years the shrinking process nodes that they were good at, and with those shrunken process nodes, you get more compute power for less power consumption and higher clock speeds. And we went through eras where we were doing really, really high clock speeds on single thread machines. And then we added 2 threads to those machines. And then we started packing cores in as fast as we could. And, we got to the point that Intel was shipping 24 core plus machines to consumers. And things like I said, things were continuing well. The as we say at PC World, the bigger bars better. The bars were kept getting bigger on the benchmark charts, but power consumption was going up, and the market was changing around them. So ARM had taken off and was driving power consumption way down with comparable compute in a lot of cases. And AMD had switched to these disaggregated chip designs where they had the compute and the memory controller and all the different bits and pieces that make a CPU on different chips that were packaged up under one heat spreader. And they were losing that kind of performance dominance, or they were having to do things like really juice clock speeds and voltages to maintain their performance dominance. I've Gordon at PC World and Max PC before that has joked for years that you'd never get fired for buying Intel. But in a data center context where the amount of compute you can pack in for the amount of cooling you have and the amount of wattage coming into the data center meant that sometimes Intel wasn't the right answer. Often Intel wasn't the right answer. And that was a place that they weren't accustomed to being. And as a result, their market share was decreasing and they were seeing AMD chipping, but AMD really more NVIDIA chipping away at their compute thing. And also, I mean, I think we don't really like generative AI stuff here, but the amount of compute, they didn't have a product that was generating the same amount of compute as NVIDIA was capable of with their AI chips with Blackwell and the stuff that they've been doing over there. So
yeah. I mean, obviously I'm not like a semiconductor market analyst or anything like that, but my impression is that at least from the investor perspective, like they missed the boat on ARM, they missed the boat on machine learning, like they missed the boat on data center to an extent.
They got laptops.
Yeah, laptops.
I mean,
seem to be doing well.
But it was kind of the position. So
and the other thing real quick, just to touch on the desktop stuff. And like I said, the period right before he came back, I looked it up just now. Skylake came out in 2015.
Yeah.
And Skylake, I had one, like I mean, from what I remember, perfectly fine chip. But then cue 5 years of what people really looked at as stagnation, where the process kind of stuck on the same node. Was it 14 nanometer for a long time? I think
it was 14, 20 and 14 for a long time. Yeah.
And that was the period when AMD was really down right before they kind of got Ryzen off the ground and good.
It was a tough period, right? Like Intel was shipping really reliable machines, but we weren't seeing enormous performance gains anymore.
Yeah, it was I remember for 2-3 years, you were seeing it was single digit performance increase from one Intel generation to the next. And power consumption, like you said, was just going up. It was not a period of rapid technical innovation on their side.
No. And then a lot of people are asking, the enthusiast community is asking if the Raptor Lake, the 13th and 14th gen problems that they've had for enthusiasts caused this. And it's absolutely not the case. No one got fired because the 13th and 14th gen had problems.
Yeah. I mean, it did not help their brand image. Let's say that,
but it's such a tiny slice of the market. It's a slice of the market that if they lost entirely, they wouldn't care about.
Right.
Right.
Does the business world care that this happened?
Nope.
Probably not terribly.
Because it only affected the enthusiast CPUs for the most part.
Yeah.
So anyway, so on the second, he announced Intel put a release out that said he's retiring. He's being replaced temporarily by David Zinsner and Michelle Johnson Holthaus, MJ Holthaus, as co-CEOs. And then Holthaus is also the CEO of Intel Products now, which I believe is a CPU. It's the things that they sell, not the things that they manufacture. And it's a shocking announcement. They didn't give a reason. I have the note open here. But they just said, hey, Intel announced that CEO Pat Gelsinger retired from the company after a distinguished 40-year plus career and has stepped down from the board of directors effective December 1, 2024, which to me says there's 3 or 4 reasons that CEOs leave companies like this, right? One is that something bad wrong health wise. One is that the board doesn't have confidence. The board or the investor, large group of investors don't have confidence in them anymore. And the other is that a family member or something bad has happened and they need to deal with personal stuff rather than take a 90-hour a week job as the CEO of this multi-billion-dollar company.
Right.
So I hope it's it sounds bad. I hope the board or some investors ran him off and he doesn't have health problems because he seems like an absolute a pretty decent guy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. The vote of no confidence seems like the likely scenario here based on how things have been going and based on the impatience of investors generally. Yeah.
So we didn't talk. The full nerd this week. We had somebody in from the ARC group, the Intel ARC group, to talk about ARC scheduled, for what it's worth, scheduled before this announcement was made.
I was going to say, I wonder how the GPU team feels about doing press for their new graphics card in the middle of all this.
We asked, and Tom gave a very well-trained answer. But Tom Peterson, Intel Tap is how people know him on Twitter. He's very forthright about where they are with graphics, and it was good. It was a good chat. It's worth watching if you want to go over to YouTube and hit that or put it in your podcast reader. But like they're not. It's unfortunate because it's kind of like if you're a sports team and your team sucks and you hire a new coach and the new coach does hires like one or two people and then has 2 seasons and then they're not immediately winning all the games again and you sack them because they're not winners after 2 years. Like it takes time to turn a ship around, and on a business like building fabs and building CPUs where the timeline on a CPU is 5 years from 5 plus from like the first implementation decisions to taping out to shipping a processor. Like he's been there for 3 years and change.
I've seen that exact quote in the business press or business world. Like they brought him in with a 5-year turnaround plan and then they tossed him after less than 4.
Yeah. The like Lunar Lake, which shipped this year and is a fabulous mobile part. Arrow Lake, which just shipped a couple weeks ago and is like up and down, but whatever, it's fine. It's good for a Rev 1 of a new architecture. Like those were both already in process when Gelsinger was hired. They had to have been. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Intel employees who listen to the podcast. So yeah, it feels like if they made a no confidence vote, it's because like investors can't wait for the time it takes to fab. So let's just jump to it. The fab situation is such that it takes a really long time to build fabs pretty much everywhere in the world. I think I found a report that says the worldwide average for the 600 fabs built between 1990 and 2020, the average time it takes to build from breaking ground to first chips rolling off is 682 days. In China, it's a little bit more than that. In Taiwan and South Korea, it's a little bit less than that. The U.S. average was 736 days.
Wow.
For the 40 something fabs that were built in the U.S. during that time period.
And presumably some of those fabs are not bleeding edge, or they're a little more conservative and like take less time because they are more known quantities, I would assume.
So that is the other thing is, there's 2 kind of different types of fabs. One is normal and the others are advanced. Normal are building things like EEPROMs and memory and SD flash memory and all the things that like well established. They're not novel processes. We're just building chips here. We're not doing rocket science, right? The advanced fabs are doing new processes and doing new technologies, and they're inventing stuff to get to the point that they can do the manufacturing. And, Intel talks about their fab goals years and years in advance. The five nodes in 4 years. I always get that backwards. I think it's 5 nodes in 4 years. Like they talked about the things that they had to invent and the things that they already had invented. And they bought companies like Foveros to help accelerate that stuff because they knew that they'd need packaging technologies and 3D chip assembly technologies and all sorts of this crazy stuff that just, they're not buying it off the shelf. They're inventing it as they go. Right. And that takes time. So anyway, it feels like this happened really fast if they're kicking him out for non-performance. Now they did cancel the 20A process earlier this year, which was one of those 5 nodes in 4 years. It seems like it was probably like the spin that they put on it, and that most of the analysts I follow and listen to seemed to buy, is that they canceled it because 18A, which is the long-term, like 20A was kind of an interim node for them to build, is US based. They were doing it in Arizona someplace. And it seemed like it was an interim process that then would be supplanted by this 18A node. And the 18A process seems like it's coming along faster than expected. They hit some yield goals earlier this year, well in advance of the time they expected to. And it's in a time when the company is cash strapped because their products aren't selling as much as they have in the past, and they're not seeing the growth that they expect on the products that they do have. they reallocated the cash to the process where it's going to have the most impact for the longest time, rather than piss away $500 million spinning up 20A only for it to go away in like 5 years.
Yeah, like I'm trying to find a date on this roadmap. This roadmap slide of theirs I just pulled up, because when you lay it out that way, it's like, oh sure, Intel, you canceled your awesome process because your awesomer process is even more. You know what I mean? It's like a likely story, but this roadmap slide shows that 20A was supposed to be manufacturing ready in first half of 2024.
Yeah,
18A in second half. So they were both supposed to come online in the same year. So they actually were planned to be practically on top of each other. So maybe that cancellation does make sense.
Yeah. So like Arrow Lake was supposed to be a 20A process. And then I'm sure that this was like a Tyler Durden insurance versus recall versus not recall formula, where somebody at Intel was like, look, it's going to cost us $500 million to spin up 20A, or we can pay not $500 million to TSMC to manufacture all of these Arrow Lake chips that we're going to sell. And the decision was pretty easy, probably when they reached that point.
Yeah. Have we said? I think we may have probably addressed this. Like the long-term point of them spinning up these advanced processes is to become a volume manufacturer of both their own chips and other people's chips, right?
Yeah, that's the goal. Is they want to remain the primary customer for their fabs, but they also want to be able to service other large customers like Apple and Samsung and Nvidia and AMD and like theoretically they want to build chips for anybody that wants high-end chips made, right?
Right. Because even just like following, I don't know, you name it, in any kind of like high-end semiconductors manufacturing, like for example, reading about AMD processors or something, you will constantly see references to like, oh, they put it on so-and-so process because Apple is hogging all of the capacity on the 3 nanometer, or, you know, Nvidia has got a gigantic order in. Like there is massive competition for TSMC's output.
There's infinite need and demand for those businesses right now. And at the same time, like it's often pitched as a, hey, America, we got to do our manufacturing here thing, but it's terrifying that 60% of all the chips in the world are made in Taiwan, which is it's on the ring of fire. It's in an area where, you know, 6+ earthquakes, like Richter scale 6 earthquakes, are not uncommon. It's not a good place to have such an enormous amount of crucial manufacturing without even factoring in the geopolitical situation with China and Taiwan that is constantly an issue.
Right.
So the idea that it's, hey, we got to build this in America. Yes, that's true. I think the first design wins that Intel announced for 18A are Department of Defense chips, so that we're not buying stuff in fighter jets and missiles from China, I believe is the idea. But at the same time, it's scary to have an enormous amount of this incredibly vital resource manufactured in a place that's tenuous.
Sure.
So yeah, anyway, I guess that's kind of it, right? Like currently what's going to change? David Zinsner gave some quotes the day after this announcement happened that said basically the core strategy remains intact, which to me says rebuild manufacturing excellence. Oh, here's the quote. Core strategy references Gelsinger's goals to rebuild Intel's manufacturing excellence and become a leader in contract chip manufacturing to compete with TSMC, which means 5 nodes in 4 years is intact, except for let's not talk about 20A.
Right. I mean, like I saw some people saying like, oh, you know, like, are they going to save the course even though he's gone, or are they just going to sell it off for parts? I'm like, how big of an investment must they have made already in this?
It's
like,
enormous.
Like the idea of just cutting bait on this thing and flushing the whole initiative basically seems like you might as well shut the whole company down at that point, right?
Well, I mean, the conversation is someone else going to buy one or some parts of the Intel business, because they split off as my understanding is they split the balance sheets for the foundries and for the chip design and sales businesses in the last 3 years sometime. And so theoretically that means they could sell off the foundry business to somebody who wants foundries.
Sure.
But right now there's not a whole lot to buy because they have these factories that haven't produced anything yet. I mean, okay, that's not fair. They have factories that have produced a whole shitload of chips over the years, but the really interesting ones with the new processes, they haven't they're not producing
Right.
really yet.
Like
18A is, there's chips coming off of 18A now, but not in volume.
Seems like it would be hard to get rid of the whole thing when the crown jewel isn't even really proven yet. Also, I have to say, I just looked up the idiom cut bait because I just said it. It does not mean what I think it means.
Is it not a fishing thing?
It is a fishing thing, but it's not. It does not mean like cut loose.
Oh, I thought you cut the line.
That was my assumption. This is the problem with applying interpretation to old idioms.
Oh man, is this about just like instead of using live bait, you just cut up a dead fish and put it on your hook?
Oh, actually, maybe either proceed with an activity or abandon it completely is a description I'm seeing. Maybe that's more correct than I thought.
Okay, yeah, I don't think they're gonna. I would be shocked if they cut bait. I think like the problem with building fabs in the U.S. is that there was an analyst report that broke this down really clearly in a way that I hadn't seen before. They said there's 7 critical requirements. You need a lot of land. You need low seismic activity. You need a stable water supply. You need reliable electricity. You need people. You need infrastructure and closeness to suppliers. Yeah. And we have all of those things in the United States in different places.
Yeah.
The material supply, like the closeness to suppliers is interesting because it's really terrifying supplies. It's like, hey, where do you get thousands of gallons of hydrofluoric acid a day? Mm-hmm. That's a scary thing to have to haul around.
Sure.
But also you have to have people that can manufacture the boules and manufacture the wafers that you're going to use to cut the chips out of. And I think often at the high level for the advanced fabs, they're probably doing that stuff on site. They're not, they're not buying boules off the boule market, eBay for boules or whatever.
They're not getting a bundle from AliExpress or something.
They have a guy in Shenzhen.
Yes. I wonder how the water is used in the process. I mean, I'm sure I could look that up.
They absorb an incredible amount of water for washing and cleaning and cooling and all the things that they do with water.
Yeah, I figure. Okay.
Which is the other thing that holds them up in the US, which is regulation stuff. So because we're a federated group of states, instead of having one set of rules for the entire country, like you have in Korea or Singapore or Taiwan, we have 50 states with 50 sets of rules. They're all a little different. It's challenging. We have the federal EPA and the state APA, which all have different regulatory requirements for, things like how you handle, what's the rule for putting hydrofluoric acid that would eat the pavement out from underneath the truck should it spill on a truck and carry it around? I bet you can't put that on a truck. I don't know. We should ask Phil Broughton that because he would know the answer to that. And then he's going to laugh at us and tell us not to mess with liquids that will decalcify your bones. It's a weird time for Intel is the TLDR. And I hope Pat's okay.
I was bullish. Yeah. I was bullish about the whole thing. I don't want to buy too much into like personal mythology, but knowing that he is an old school assembly programmer, chip designer, engineer who came up through the glory days of Intel seemed promising. It was something that felt easy to rally around, especially as you see them talking about trying to pivot back to manufacturing excellence and get their whole core business back on track. Seemed exciting because just like it was exciting to see AMD come back a few years ago with the Ryzen and become so strong and look at the innovation that has and competition that has driven, like, you want Intel to be equally strong, right?
Yeah, Lisa Su has been kicking acid at AMD for a long time now, and it was fun to see Pat come in as somebody who used to make things versus being like a guy that was good at selling soap. Yeah, right. And these are fairly minor examples, but as AMD has gotten stronger, you've seen Intel react. Like prices got better. This is a pretty minor niche example that only I care about and some other home server nerds, but like they started putting ECC memory support back in the low end processors again because for years, they just had that arbitrarily disabled to make you go buy a very expensive Xeon because they could. Look, they started putting enough PCI Express lanes in their CPUs again, right? Like this is the products have become better. You look at what happened. I look at what happened with mobile with the Copilot Plus PCs that just launched. And there's 3 chip makers, Qualcomm and Intel and AMD were made laptops specifically for this new kind of, not really a spec, but it's kind of a spec that Microsoft came up with. And the result is you have 3 wildly different products that can all serve the same niche, but they have different strengths and weaknesses. Like the AMD ones are really good at compute and a little heavier lifting than the Intel ones, but the battery life isn't quite as good, right? The Intel ones have incredible battery life and great compute, but they aren't quite as fast in the raw benchmarks as the AMD stuff is. And then Qualcomm is real weird because like it doesn't run a lot of software, and maybe don't buy the Qualcomm ones, but they're great for corporate fleets because the corporate fleets actually want computers that won't run a bunch of software. They just want computers that will run the software that they want and nothing else. So
Sure.
yeah. Anyway, computers are weird, man.
Yeah.
They're complicated and hard and they're interesting to talk about again. So
yes. One other quick aside I meant to mention about on the subject of TSMC and all of their manufacturing capacity being concentrated on a small island that is under multiple types of threat at times.
yeah.
They have also been expanding into the United States. They have opened, and I only know that. I only know that because there was a big report about culture clash at one of their new fabrication facilities in the United States.
Is it the one in Chandler?
I don't know. How many do they have, actually?
I think, well, they were supposed to open one in Minnesota, but I think that was just a fake thing from the previous administration.
Yeah, that's Arizona, I think, is probably their big. I'm actually not sure which facility it was, but there was a big report a year or two ago about clashes in culture between the local American employees and the managers from Taiwan, and some. You can go read the report.
TSMC's in Arizona, yeah.
Yeah, Arizona, that's what it was.
Yeah.
But the point is that even they are expanding their own operation to other continents.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, why not? And also, there are rules now about buying chips from other countries for Department of Defense stuff, which is, I assume, an enormous amount of money. I don't know for sure.
Yes. And then we didn't even get into the CHIPS Act that was passed under the Biden administration. That's, I think Intel had something like $3 billion in subsidies.
8, I think.
Is it 8? Large amounts of money coming from the government to help get these facilities up and running as well.
Yeah. So, and for what it's worth, that has been a little slower than expected in some cases. Like Samsung pulled out of a thing specifically because the payments were taking too long to come. So anyway, yeah, it's I guess best wishes to Pat, and I hope that the new folks do a good job because it's important. Having Intel around to be competition is important and good.
Yes, for sure. It's been a real bummer seeing some prognosticating about their demise after this news came out. Like, I mean, that's probably premature and hyperbolic, but just thinking about the history of Intel and, you know, what we grew up with and what symbolized computing generally for so long, like it would be really sad if something like that were to come to pass.
I mean, it's unusual for multi-billion-dollar companies to disappear.
Yeah,
right?
It's not going to happen, but still, just the idea that it's even being floated is just sad to think about.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of things disappearing, that it's sad to even think about. Actually,
that's quite a segue.
I don't know if I have I don't have strong feelings about this one. I don't think anymore.
I much like the example I just gave about Intel. Like I kind of do for what it symbolizes.
Yeah,
if not the application itself so much. They killed WordPad.
Yeah.
This came from the suggestions channel on the Discord. Somebody, I think they might have been half joking, but never joke in the episode suggestions channel.
No, we love a good joke suggestion.
We are prone to take you deadly seriously. I think they actually wanted to hear about it. They have deprecated WordPad.
This was Fortune, by the way, who suggested this one.
Yes. Yeah. I guess it was September 2023 that Microsoft announced that WordPad would be going away.
Yeah.
But it is just as of the rollout of 24H2, the most recent major update to Windows 11, that they straight up have yanked it. I believe we have verified that WordPad no longer exists on your machine. Is that correct?
So I'm running 24H2 right now.
Okay.
I'm going to check. I'm going to do a live test here. Let's see. System 24H2. Yep, that's confirmed. Installed on 11/22/2024. I hit the start key and I'm typing WordPad. I'm getting web results. I had WordPad.exe for a minute there.
Uh-huh.
There we go.
You want to track it down and run it manually?
Nope, it wasn't the WordPad.exe. If I type WordPad.exe, it opens. It's still here. This is a Microsoft of lies.
Okay, well, we have to cancel the rest of this podcast.
Well, okay, but hold on. I'm getting the circle. It says it's not responding.
Oh, wait, so you can't actually run it then?
It seems like I can't actually run it.
Oh, okay. What is that? Some kind of weird like stub executable that they shoved in there or something?
I don't know, man. This is really weird.
That's odd.
It has a window there. It looks like WordPad. It says document WordPad not responding, and then it's crashing. So maybe they just broke it. And they were like, hey, what if we go back and post date a thing from last year in September and be like, hey, man, we're getting rid of this with 2023, with 2024. It's going to be gone because somebody broke WordPad. Well, that's my theory.
That's the risk of deprecated software. It could break at any time. and
yeah,
they will never fix
exactly.
it. So apparently it's, if I'm reading this correctly, it might have been on Wikipedia that I saw this. I'm looking for it. Apparently they stopped shipping WordPad in new installations of Windows 11 at the beginning of this year.
Oh,
But now they are actively disabling it.
so I still have it.
Existing installs, or at least they say they are.
So it's working for me.
I'm sorry, here it is on Wikipedia. Yes, in January, WordPad was no longer auto-installed after a clean installation of the OS.
Oh, but it's still in my program files x86 / Windows NT / accessories folder.
Well, huge mistake including this topic then, I guess.
No, it's fine. But I mean,
it's fun to talk about old software like this. And like I said, like I don't have a ton of affection for WordPad, like kind of a little bit, but it also just makes me think back to the early days of Windows 95 and how exciting all that was.
Well, I was going to say, like, so WordPad, it was Windows 95 at first, right?
Yes, it was introduced in 95.
But it replaced Write, which was their kind of like JV word processor that was bundled in before.
That was actually the biggest trip of reading a little bit about WordPad for this, was remembering the existence of Microsoft Write.
Yeah.
Because does it ever really weird you out how certain pieces of information can be embedded in your brain and not accessed for literal decades and then just come floating back?
I know what the icon looks like. It's like a piece of paper with a pen, like a fountain pen. It's blue.
I haven't thought about Microsoft Write since the 90s, but I used it plenty in Windows 3.1.
Yeah, me too.
And for some reason, just completely forgot about it. That just attests to the excellence of WordPad. You completely forgot about Write once it came along. So
for a long time for me, WordPad was the thing that I used if I needed to open a Linux file and didn't have like Notepad++ or something that understood line endings, Linux line endings, right?
See, you had way more advanced text use cases than I did at that time, because like all I ever used it for was to open doc files. If I ever came in possession of a doc file, that's all I had to open it.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. So to me, the story of WordPad is them removing this is them saying, hey man, we don't need to bundle in a word processor anymore.
Yeah,
because
basically,
like if you think about it, adding Write in with Windows, early versions of Windows, was kind of a weird flex, saying, hey, we're going to ship the OS with the thing that you used to just use. Like for a lot of people in the 80s and early 90s, the computer was a word processor or it was a spreadsheet or it was a database, but it wasn't all of those things. It was just one at a time.
Right.
Because there was no multitasking in DOS. And hey, we're going to put a word processor in here that's going to do what 90% of you need without buying anything else is a weird thought. And that we've reached a point where they're like, no, you just go to the website and use the Live 365 web version if you need a word processor now. Feels weird.
It does. A sign of the times. Write, we'll get back to WordPad, but Write operated on, do you remember the .wri file?
Oh yeah. They were all binary and weird if you opened them in Notepad by accident.
Yes. Although it looks like as of Windows 3.0, so by the time we had a computer in my family, Write could also open doc files.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then later this is a little aside here, I feel embarrassed to admit this. I have always in my head since I was a teenager pronounced this OLE.
Oh.
OLE. You know what I'm talking about?
Those were like, it was like a link thing or something,
object
right?
linking and embedding, I believe, is what I have always known it to stand for. Yes, that's correct. But I never really knew exactly what it did. And also, again, anybody listening who knows what that was from early Windows, how did you actually say it? Because in my head, I always said OLE.
Did it let you drag and drop? Is that what it was?
Yes, I think it may have been some kind of like program interoperability thing, if I'm not mistaken. Well, here we go. Technology developed by Microsoft that allows embedding and linking to documents and other objects.
Oh, it was the predecessor to shortcuts then.
Kind of. Well, within documents, it sounds like it. Let's see. Are you familiar with the acronym OCX?
No.
That also sounds really familiar to me. The OLE control extension.
Oh yeah, of course. The OLE, 100%. I use that all the time still.
It was an evolution of the original DDE or dynamic data exchange. The
DDE was important.
Are you actually being serious?
No, that one? If your DDE got jacked up, then you couldn't open Photoshop files, I think, in Windows 3.0.
Oh, interesting. I apologize for going through acronym hell here, but like this is bringing back a lot of memories that like 13 to 14-year-old me was fascinated by if I didn't quite understand them all.
It's funny to think about because prior to Windows 95, drag and drop was really spotty, right? Like you could copy and paste kind of, I think, between like simple kind of text formats. So you do like text, or I mean, I guess if you had an image editor, you could copy from an image to another image, but probably you were just copying from like one Photoshop window to another one.
Yeah.
And being able to drag and drop a document into another document was an unusual thing back then.
Oh, for sure. I mean, let's be real. Like the Windows 3.1 graphical shell could barely handle two windows side by side, dragging in between them in general.
I mean, it depended on the computer. I feel like we had at one of my workplaces, we had a Pentium 60 that ran Windows 3.1 because of hardware compatibility stuff.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean less for horsepower reasons or performance and more just interface design. Like keeping, what I mean is like, managing multiple windows on screen at once. Program Manager was just not great for handling stuff like that.
Yeah, especially at like on a 640 by 480 or 800 by 600 monitor or whatever it was back then.
Which actually like kind of goes to why a big part of why Windows 95 was so exciting was because it brought the actual real desktop metaphor to PCs that the Mac had forever, right?
It gave me a place to put my crap.
That's right. Right. You had a thing that you minimized the windows to and could maximize or restore them at will just by clicking them.
Well, you could do that before, but it wasn't very good.
But who ever ran Program Manager not maximized?
And I can't remember when was it that you could look at the window contents as you were resizing and moving? I feel like that was like a Windows 3.1 thing.
Oh, I don't think 3.1 ever had that. Did it? I'm not sure what 95 ever even had that. Was that a 98 thing?
Windows
show contents while dragging, I think, was generally the way that was described.
Yeah. Windows 3, you'd see an outline of the window when you were dragging it around, if I remember right.
Just like a dotted line, yes.
Yeah, or like a shaded line or something. But anyway, it was a weird. Computers were weird.
They were.
We've come a long way.
Yes.
It's been a long road.
Anyway, Write, as I said, the predecessor to WordPad, opened Write files and doc files in addition to text, although you had the venerable Notepad to open text files.
Well, but the other thing maybe not Write, but the other thing that WordPad could do was it would load Notepad in the old days. If your file was too big and you had to page out of memory, would not run very well.
Oh, that was not even so much in the old days. I think that was true until like within the last 5 years or something. It was
true until the modern redo with tabs of Notepad came out, I believe. Yes.
Like until like, God, probably Windows 8?
No, I think it was Windows 10. I don't think we got tabbed Notepad until fairly recently.
Well, tab Notepad was only 11, I believe. What I mean is I believe up through Windows 8 was still that original Notepad that would just seize up if you opened like a 5 megabyte text file or something.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. So as we said, they discontinued Write and debuted WordPad in Windows 95. It could open rich text, RTF, and doc files right off the bat.
Oh man, Word 6 doc files, the best word?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
I remember I used to be excited about new versions of Word.
Yeah, in the course of talking about doing this little topiclet, the idea of doing a whole word processor episode came up. I'm not sure if that's a good idea or not.
Yeah, it's funny because it used to be, there's a thing that happened where the software got better all the time because they made new versions all the time. And you'd get, like, you may not like all the new features, but there was probably something in there. Like, I remember when they added the red squiggly underline on your misspelled words in Word.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That was a big deal.
Yeah.
Like that meant I stopped misspelling stuff in Word documents.
Real-time dynamic spell check is not a thing that used to happen.
Yeah, or I
spell
guess
check was a thing you went up to the menu and ran when you were done.
I mean, look, when that happened, that was exciting too. The first versions of WordPerfect I used didn't have that even. So
what was your very first word processor that you remember?
I had exposure to WordStar because we had a computer that was a hand-me-down from somebody that had WordStar installed on it. And that
is that apocryphal that was the actual first software word processor, or is that correct?
I believe that was the first one on a personal computer, at least.
Okay.
But I haven't done any research about that, so I don't know.
Oh yeah, that was WordStar was created.
Like
oh my 80s. God, WordStar is older than me. Came out in 1978.
Yeah, so I used I would have used WordStar on an IBM PC AT clone, probably that was a 286, I would bet, or an 8088 maybe.
78 is pretty safe to say it was probably damn near the first software word processor.
I mean, I think that there were software word processors on mainframe machines, but I don't think they were on mini computers.
Yes.
And there were definitely, personal computers. There were definitely mini computers. Like there was a Wang mini computer that had a full ass word processor on it that ran on like a shared terminal machine with like 5 hookups to it or something. I did live with one of those. I used one of those when I worked for the Congressman. He still had that
wow,
enormous Wang.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Just gonna let that one go.
You're gonna put is the title gonna be Will's Congressman's Enormous Wang? Please say no. Dude, it was the size. It made the case that you have your machine in look really small. It was like 3 of those.
Oh, really?
It was huge.
I always understood the term mini computer to be the like for refrigerator size, not the room size, but the stand up 6 foot tall.
So this one wasn't 6 feet tall. This one was probably 4 feet by 4 feet by 4. It was like a cube.
Wow. Congress people had computers like that in their offices.
Well, okay. So my congressman, when I worked there, was already 80 years old. So he had invested once and was never buying another computer.
Okay.
For this, he had secretaries still. He didn't have like legislative assistants, and the secretaries that worked there had IBM. I think they were called Selectrics, that were typewriters that you turn the knob and program a letter into.
Yep, I've heard that name.
And they could crank out the letters with those. But for things that were more complicated or needed more form letters, they made the interns type letters on the Wang.
Oh, I'm seeing. Yeah, I'm sure you don't remember the model number. It was not a VS 8400 by chance, was it?
It was something 400. Yeah.
Okay. Because yes, that is a very large computer about like what you have described.
Yeah. I don't like, if something happened to the Wang, a guy had to come. It wasn't like you could just bust it open and hose it out.
Words have never been spoken.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Jesus. Amazing. Sorry.
Anyway, word processors. We don't need to get too far down this road, but I think it was a DOS version of WordPerfect is the first word processor I spent any real time on, because my high school had a small lab of 286s. That's what I learned to type on a 286 running WordPerfect in DOS.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So it was perfectly serviceable for that.
Let me tell you, going in 1993 or 1994 and having to work on that freaking terminal-based microcomputer when you had used Windows 3.1 or 3.0 at that point felt like traveling back in time.
I mean, when you say terminal, you're at least on a CRT, right? Not a teletype.
Yeah, no, it was a terminal, but it was like a green 320 by 240 VAX kind of display.
Sure. It was 220 type thing.
Yeah. It was a lot.
Yes. Real quick, to go back to, sorry, I kind of steamrolled over your Linux line ending comment. I've still, to this day, honestly, I've run into that occasionally as I go back and forth between the Linux or BSD and Windows all the time, but I still don't exactly know what form of those different line endings take. I just know that they show up as like capital M in the wrong text editor a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like there's basically DOS line endings and like Unix line endings, right? Yeah.
So the reason it happens is that a DOS and Unix use different characters to denote a new line.
Okay.
So Unix, I think displays them as /n, and Windows does them as /r/n.
Lowercase n is a new line character on Unix for sure.
Yeah. So if you open a Unix file on Windows in the old days, you'd see the /n, and it would be all one line. When you converted it to same thing, worse if you saved it in Windows and opened it on Linux and you have /n's at the /r's at the end of all your lines when the /n got cut off to be the new line.
Right.
These days, we all just use text editors that handle this without us having to think about it, and it's not a problem anymore.
Well,
so like Notepad++ just handles it.
Hang on, really quick. Apt search DOS to Unix. Yep, there it is.
Yeah, that's the other thing is there's a tool that does this for you.
Line. Yes, DOS to Unix and Unix to DOS are fun little command line utilities to convert those files.
Just use Notepad++, man, for the love of God. Or
I've got Notepad++ and modern Notepad and a number of other things.
Or alternately, you can shell into the terminal on your Linux machine when you need to edit a text file and just do what a sane person would do and open it in Nano.
Sorry, I use Vim.
I don't want to talk to you about this.
Thank you. Dude, Vim is so fucking awesome. I've gotten really good at Vim.
Nope. We're not going to have this conversation. Great. This is a trap.
It's so great.
We're here to talk about WordPad, not your weird Vim perversion, Brad.
I've been writing Docker Compose YAML files in Vim, and it's like really awesome when you get your head around.
I'm glad that it works for you.
So fast. You can do so much so fast.
This is a podcast of no judgment, but I'm being very challenged right now.
Like, do you want to add a specific set of characters to the end of every line from range X to Y?
I've never wanted to do that,
regardless of how long each line is.
Never been a problem.
All right.
I just want to move my cursor and type the words. Sometimes I want to copy and paste.
Do you want to do all of that modally?
Nope. Nope. Never want to modal anything.
Well, anyway,
I'm the least modal person. Like the only modal I want to know is about the modal nodes, baby.
Fair. I don't know that we've talked a ton about WordPad here, but I don't know if there's that much more to say. I will say PC World actually ran a little story that I'll put in the show notes about how to get WordPad back if you really, really want it on a machine that no longer has it. The solution is to go harvest the executable from a Windows 11 install that still has it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But there's a couple of you need a specific DLL and a folder of localization files along with it to make it run right.
I mean, look, at this point, there's better options for WordPad. I think.
Yes, but I also love the hypothetical person who cannot live without WordPad and has to go out and hunt down a copy of it. I
mean, I think it's funny because like the stuff I would have used WordPad for back in the day, I probably use something like Joplin for now, which I said it saves Joplin. We talked about Joplin a couple weeks ago. I said it saves files in Markdown. It doesn't. It'll export your entire library to Markdown. It doesn't. It saves it in its own thing for whatever reason. Anyway, but like there are text editors that just work in Markdown now, and you can just point them at a folder on your hard drive, and it'll work like a giant database of your text stuff.
Yeah,
pretty good. Or just use Google Docs or Live Office Live on the web.
Well, hey, archive.org has your back because here is a repository of WordPad. Just in case. You know what? Google Docs might go away someday. WordPad never will.
WordPad is forever. I gotta say, I love the way new Notepad works, where the tabs are persistent. When you open Notepad, your old tabs are still there.
I think I love it too. I use it. I certainly use it. I have like 5 open tabs in Notepad every time I open it, but it is kind of ephemeral.
It is.
It does feel like it encourages bad habits.
Oh, it definitely encourages bad habits. Yeah.
You and by you, I mean me, like I should save the files out to actual files if it's anything important.
Oh, I always save them. Yeah.
Oh, I see. No, I see. I've got like 5 unsaved tabs.
Oh, no. I used to do that with Notepad++. And then one day the bad thing happened.
Yep.
And it didn't open the files. And then I was like, oh no.
Nope, never doing that again. Well,
and then I sent out about a bunch of press keys for the anacrusis to people that already had gotten the keys were already activated, but because I hadn't saved the file, I didn't know.
To be fair, none of my unsaved tabs are that important.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say real quick in the course of looking up WordPad.
Yes.
Did you know that there is a Microsoft fandom wiki?
Like Microsoft.fandom.com?
Yes, like capital F fandom, Microsoft.fandom.com.
Oh, man.
Like I thought fandom was reserved for like, anime and tabletop and things of that nature.
There's a video games, Brad.
There is a wiki. There is a fan wiki for Microsoft.
That's kind of amazing. Do they have like a Jim Alchin page?
Probably. I don't know. But the Windows 95 page on there is actually pretty good because you can see the boot up screens from like all the beta versions of Windows.
Oh my God. They do have a Jim Alchin page.
I don't even know who that is, but I am.
He was the architect on Vista.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he retired in early 2007, oddly coincidentally, right after Vista shift.
Weird. Who would have thought?
Yeah, weird.
But I can see all the boot up screens for various versions of Chicago here.
Oh man, which Chicago was XP?
No, Chicago was Windows 95. That was the code name for
Windows 95. Oh wow. Yeah. This is going to destroy me. Thank you for sharing this. I appreciate it.
Yep, there was a lot of stuff on here.
I had no idea that they had a fandom. Like this is just conceptually very, very strange to me, Brad.
Yeah, I get it.
Oh, look at those Windows 3.1 desktops. That is some hot business right there. You see the print manager? Yeah. Oh, this is the good stuff.
Yep, it sure is. You want to walk down memory lane.
Okay.
Also, I Googled a picture of Jim Alchin. I think he did an interview on YouTube like a year or 2 ago that I really need to watch.
In Dave's garage?
Yes, that's the
one.
You
go talk to Dave?
I don't know.
Okay.
You mean the guy who wrote everything in Windows ever?
Look, Dave is great. I like Dave's garage.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe he did write quite a bit of that software.
I knowing what I know now about how things actually work in the real world, I have no doubt in my mind that there's a very small number of people who contributed an enormous amount of code to early computing that is still lingering.
I don't doubt him. I have no evidence that he didn't write any of that stuff. It was in my algorithm so much for a while that it really felt like.
Look, the algorithm knows, Brad. They know what you crave.
I guess so. But anyway, I've seen some clips of that Alchin interview that he did, and I think it was him. It might have been somebody else, actually.
Jim, I got to talk to Jim a couple of times for different stuff. He was one of the he was of the straight shooter variety who then accidentally made Vista and had to have it was I felt bad for him.
Yeah, I could see that. I will say, whoever this interview was, I think there were references to like OS2 and Xenix, which was Microsoft's version of Unix. A lot of fun old operating system stuff in there. We should do an episode about Xenix sometime, so I can talk how I wish Xenix had won instead of DOS, and how different the computing world would be.
It would have been a different world. Yeah. So he was on Dave's Garage.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to watch that full interview.
Oh, wait, hold on. Nope. I apologize. He talked to Dave Cutler is who you're thinking about.
That's it. That's the one. Yes.
Yeah. And Dave, it's confusing because Dave's Garage is run by Dave Plummer, who wrote Task Manager, and Dave Cutler just doesn't talk to press at all.
Oh,
but he basically wrote a buttload of software.
Oh, he was the architect of Windows NT.
Yeah,
that's what it was. That's what he was talking about in there. Is that I think that was the clip I saw, was that there was a point where they were not sure what the next generation of Microsoft operating system was. And then Windows 3.1 blew up out of nowhere. And then they were like, okay, I guess it's Windows then. And then that's when they started the NT project.
Yeah, that's it. It's a 3-hour interview. It's worth watching. Anyway, it's nice because it's like the guys that made this whole thing happen. You're hearing the stories now because they can talk about them because they're not afraid that Bill Gates is going to come to their house and break their knees.
Yes, they got their payouts already, so they're probably okay.
Right, and they all have replacement knees now, so they're probably fine.
Yep.
Anyway, on that note, the podcast I think has come to a close.
Yeah.
And this is the time when I remind you all that this is a listener-supported show. We wouldn't be here without you, the listener. And if you would like to find out how to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/techpod, where for $5, you get access to our monthly episodes, our monthly Patreon exclusive episodes, where we often talk about like projects that are going on kind of in the background that may or may not become eventual episodes. It's a place for us to talk about what's front of mind. And we have quite a bit of fun there. But you also get access to the Discord, which is full of beautiful nerds just like you. It's a great place to ask questions and to chat about things you love and are interested and are curious about. Everybody, look, we have a pretty vibrant community in there that I think we are always welcome new folks in.
We sure do. It's a fun place.
It is. I mean, inclusivity is our byword. So you can find out about that by going to patreon.com/techpod. It's $5 a month. And it helps us keep doing the show, which we appreciate.
It doesn't just help, it enables.
Yeah.
It's the reason.
If I was like, hey, honey, I got to spend all this time every week reading about stuff for the podcast, and I didn't make any money off of it, she would have pretty strong feelings, rightly so.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, this is the part of the show where we thank our patrons. Thank you, patrons.
Thank you, patrons.
But especially our executive producer tier patrons, including Andrew Slosky, Crow, Jordan Lippett, Bunny Fiend, Twinkle Twinkie, David Allen, James Kamek, and Pantheon, makers of the HS3 high-speed 3D printer. I also should remind people that you can do gift Patreons now.
Oh.
So if you have a friend who you think would enjoy being in the community, you don't know how to do it, hit us on the Discord. We can explain it. But you can buy a gift subscription to the podcast, to the Patreon for a year, and invite people that you like and think would be good contributors into our little community, into the community, which is awesome.
Give the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. Access to Brad and me. Yeah. Sounds bad when you say it that way. Jeez. Well, I'm going to get on a plane tomorrow and go see Taylor Swift.
Yeah. Have fun. Good luck.
I am excited. I got a lot of really lovely recommendations and invitations from folks last week. And I appreciate all of that. We're sadly just in Vancouver for like 2 nights because they jacked up the price on the hotels to Taylor Swift levels. But maybe next time. So thanks everybody for the invites and the suggestions. If anybody has a ramen place they like, hit me up though. I'd love to know because I did promise the kiddo some good ramen while we're there. But that'll do it for us this week. We will be back next week with another episode and maybe a report on what Taylor's like. I don't know.
Should we just do an episode about the Taylor Swift show?
Dude, I've watched a lot of Taylor Swift shows on TikTok over the last year because my wife has watched a lot of TikTok shows on. Anyway, I'm excited to see it. It'll be fun.
All right. I look forward to hearing about it.
We will see you all next week. Thanks for listening, everybody. You have a lovely week. Bye.